Hello and welcome back to Joe's Math Tools. In our session today, we are solving a rational equation by finding the LCD. So if you want to see how this is done, let's get started. To begin solving our equation today, we will start by finding the LCD of the terms in our denominator. And the terms that we have in our denominator is x minus 3 and x. Now remember that when finding your LCD, remember that x minus 3 is an expression and that x by itself is just a variable. The only way that we can form our LCD would be to multiply these two together. So our LCD will be x, and in parentheses, we're going to put the expression x minus 3. So now that we have our LCD, we're now going to begin converting our fractions into their equivalent form where we have this expression in our denominator. So let's begin with our first term, which is x over x minus 3, and this is going to be multiplied, to my x and my x minus 3. So that's what we have in our denominator, and we're going to be multiplying those two together. Now, I'm not simplifying at this point because remember I told you when you find the LCD, especially for your denominators, do not expand the parentheses, but to leave them as they are. That's so that when you get to this point where you're going to begin canceling, so that you can multiply, it will make the process a lot easier. So my x minus 3 will cancel, leaving us with just x. So x times x will equal to x squared. So our first fraction in its equivalent form is x squared. So now that we've find the equivalent form for the first fraction, we're going to do the same thing for our second fraction, which is 4 over x. And again, we're multiplying it to our LCD. And in multiplying to my LCD, my x's in this case will cancel, leaving me with just x minus 3 in parentheses, and 4 times x will equal to negative 4, and negative 4 times negative 3 will equal to, sorry, I forgot my x there, so a plus 12. So make sure that you are extra careful with adding in those different variables, so that when you get to this point, you have everything that you need included in your equation. So now let's begin with our last fraction, which is my 3 over x minus 3, and that will also be multiplied to my LCD, and I will be canceling my x minus 3 for this one, where we'll just have 3 times x, which will equal to 3x. Okay, so now that all of our fractions are in their equivalent form, we're now going to remove our denominator and begin simplifying or collecting our like terms so that we can begin to solve for our unknown variable x. Okay, and because this is a quadratic formula, I will be putting it in its standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So we'll have ax squared minus my 4x minus my 3x plus my 12 equal to 0. Okay, so now that we've collected our like term, I will be solving this question by factoring, and since my 4x and my 3x are already factored, because remember we are going to be getting our positive 12, and I know that with negative 4 times negative 3, I will get my positive 12, and you know that negative 4 plus -3 will give me my -7. So I'm just going to factor these two as they are, beginning with my first two terms. So they have an x in common. I will remove my x, which will leave me with x minus 4. And for my -3x plus 12, I will also pull out a -3 because I need for both parentheses to have x minus 4 in them. And by pulling out my -3, it will leave me with an x, and I know that 3 times -4 will equal to a positive 12. So that's what I'm going to use, and then to factor my two brackets, I'll have x minus 3 and x minus 4 equal to 0. So for my x, either x minus 3 is equal to 0, or my x minus 4 is equal to 0. So x will be equal to either 3 or x will be equal to 4. So one of these is going to be our answer for this equation. So now we are going to check our answers to see both of these answers make my question valid. So I'm going to begin with x minus 3 for this one. And we will begin our substitution by replacing x for 3 everywhere that it appears in our equation. And we know that with our fractions, one of the things that we always try to avoid is having 0 in the denominator, because even if you were to pull out your calculator, and so for this equation, my x equals 3 does not satisfy my equation, because I am going to be getting an undefined answer as it relates to these two fractions that is giving me a 0 in my denominator. So with this equation, this is going to pose a bit of a problem, and we're not going to be able to solve this because the 0 in the denominator will classify the equation as undefined, which will hinder us from further solving this equation. So for this one, this answer will not satisfy our equation. Okay, so let's test our final answer, which is x is equal to 4. So we have x minus, we're going to be substituting x for 4 everywhere that it appears in our equation. And we're looking like we're going to be looking good for this one, because we're not going to get a 0 in the denominator. So now let's simplify. So 4 minus 3 will equal to 1 minus 4 divided by 4. I'll also work this out while I'm here as well. These will cancel, leaving us with just 1. And I'll leave that as 1 over 1. We really don't have to do that, but you know, we should be a little bit past that phase at this stage. And we know that all whole numbers have a denominator of 1, so we will remove that denominator. And 4 minus 1 is equal to 3, and we have 3 is equal to 3. So our solution x equals 4 does satisfy our equation. So we have one answer, which is x equals 4, that satisfies our equation. And then our x equals to 3 did not satisfy the equation. So for this question, at least we have one answer that is working for us while the other one isn't. So I hope to see you again back here in the next video when we return back to Joe's Math Tools, where we make math easy.